So my kind of understanding and knowledge about people who use drugs and the relationship of that to HIV transmission and prevention and stuff was pretty deep, and I cared a lot about it, and very few people were talking about it back then. It was very taboo. You could go to big international conferences. People would present data on injection drug use related AIDS, but nobody's really talking about the population. I knew about the AIDS Task Force before I came to Pittsburgh, but they were not supporting the work we were doing with injection drug users. And by and large at the time, I would say injection drug users were not really well represented in the client group that were being served. They were there, but they were often there kind of undercover, or it wasn't talked about, or if people were still using drugs, they were kind of, often pushed to the side. So there was a larger conversation that needed to be had about all of that with the task force. Understanding that they were doing amazing work, particularly in the gay community. So very respectfully went to them and offered to meet with their board. And it was a very interesting meeting. Some people got it, a lot of people didn't. They didn't understand why we would be doing what we were doing. Long story short, after some really pretty reasonable conversation, a little bit of clutching of pearls, we came to an understanding that this was a really important part of working in the HIV community, and that the task force needed to stand up and acknowledge that and support the syringe service program. And that went a long way towards legalization, because then, all of the people supporting, not all of them, but quite a few of the people supporting the task force, which was a pretty influential group of people at the time, we were able to kind of garner their support by 2002. Way too long, but we finally got it legalized. So I eventually ended up on the board for about 6 years. So really was involved in the transition from PATF to Allies for Health and Wellbeing in terms of setting up a clinical program that would not only provide an additional area, an additional provider of care for people with HIV, but also people at risk for getting HIV, for people who couldn't find non-stigmatizing health care because of their gender orientation, their sexual orientation, those kinds of things, or their drug use or their mental health. What kept me going was the sheer bravery of the people that I worked with. Certainly the people who were living and dying with HIV, the activists, people in the queer community that were fighting back and acting up, incredibly brave people. And then it was really about the providers. When I became a healthcare provider, it was like there's a lot of brave, smart people who were stepping in and doing this work, even though we didn't know if we were going to get HIV. We didn't know if we would die. I mean, I had needle stick injuries before treatment. So it was a lot of bravery there. And then, people just standing up and saying, not only you have to do something, but actually stepping up and saying, this is what you need to do. People with AIDS basically giving themselves PhDs in pharmacology and research and designing clinical trials and saying to the drug companies and the government, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to study. And then fighting to get those drugs produced and affordable. It's been an incredible movement that has changed the way healthcare is provided, not only in the United States, but in a lot of the world. Because this concept of patients telling the healthcare system what to do was pretty unusual. I don't know, it's just been an incredible privilege to have done this work for this long. I feel like I not only had to become a really good healthcare provider, and my patients taught me how to do that, sometimes very much against my will. They were really a lot of times right. And so I learned to be a much better healthcare provider, but I really learned how to be a better human being. I don't know that I ever saved anybody's life. Certainly not by myself. It was always with the patients, with their allies, with other people in the community. So this is not work you can do alone. There's no lone saviors in this world, or this work. And I really learned that deeply in that process. So.